This is Performance Anxiety on the Pantheon Podcast Network, and I am your host, Mark. And this guest has just fulfilled a lifelong dream. Welcome stalwart of the New York City music scene, George Usher, to the podcast. But before moving to New York, he was stealing Beatles songs in Cleveland. He moved to New York City knowing no one and waited a year before even playing out. But once he did, he played some legendary venues like CBGB's and Max's Kansas City. He became a hired gun in the 80s and reveals the difficulties of marketing yourself pre-internet. And that's when his Stephensonville project began. George explains why it's taken 30 years for the album to come out and the circumstances that gave it life after so long. With it taking so long, it is practically required listening. That means going to Bandcamp and buying the limited edition vinyl because it isn't available on streaming services yet. Follow him on Facebook for more information. Go to @PerformanceANX to follow us. Go to performanceanx.threadless.com for merch or ko-fi.com/performanceanxiety to send us money, presumably for coffee. And I hope you enjoy this satisfying story of a fulfilled dream with George Usher on Performance Anxiety on the Pantheon Podcast Network.
Hello, this is George Usher, and I hope you can find my Stephensonville album and appreciate it. And I'm here at Performance Anxiety Podcast.
Hey, George.
Hey, Mark, how you doing?
Oh, good. Wonderful to meet you.
Good morning.
All right. So thank you for joining me. This is really cool because you're releasing a project, a very impressive project, I might add, it's about 30 years in the making. Right. And before we get into that, and maybe because we're getting into it, I think a project like that kind of deserves a backstory. And so I like to find out about my guest's history, how you got into music in the first place, what drove you to get into this line of work, and how everything started. So where else to start but your childhood? Was music a big factor growing up for you? Was it something that was in the house a lot, or is it something that you came to outside of family?
Well, yeah, my mother had been a church organist because her father had been a minister. Oh. So she always brought a lot of music into the house, and we actually, I was the baby of the family. I had two older sisters, so I came late. But as a family, we were like the last vestige of that sing-along family. We had a piano in the living room, and we actually, in the old days of sing-along with Mitch, the late 50s and early 60s, we would actually gather around the piano. My mother would play a wide variety of songs, not religious songs, mind you, unless it was Christian.
Oh, okay.
And as a family, we would sing. And in most cases, the evening would devolve into arguments between my sisters over who was singing soprano and who was singing alto. And they really didn't have any idea what that meant. But they tried, But we were always singing. Certainly, what I remember is being called in from outside into my mother's kitchen in the fall of '63 because a radio station was playing Please Please Me.
Oh, okay.
And my mother said, Georgie, you need to hear this. Now, I'm not sure what kind of premonition she had. She'd always rocked me to sleep listening to, they had in Cleveland, they had sort of light classical music on the radio in the evenings, and she would rock me to sleep as a baby listening to the music. So we always had a good relationship with the music, but she called me in to hear this Beatles thing, and I remember hearing about half of Please Please Me, which is a short song, but I was able to hear about half of it. And I remember thinking, that it sounded like the Four Seasons to me. That was my initial reaction because of all the vocals.
Okay, wow.
And but that was like hearing like 1 minute of Please Please Me being called in off the football field.
Right.
And then I went back out to play. But like most people in my generation, or most musicians, to be honest with you, it's a ubiquitous kind of comment, but that's what makes it all the more meaningful, is that, you know, we were watching The Scarecrow of Romney Marsh on Walt Disney, and turned it over to Ed Sullivan. And when I saw the Beatles, I turned to my father and said, "That's what I want to do."
Wow.
Words that were either spoken or thought by so many people. It's an amazing thing. It's funny because nowadays, what is it, 60 years later, more than 60 years later, I don't know how many years later, people try to gauge success or impact, by how many number ones you've had, or record sales, or, even though the business is like much, much bigger than it was back then. The record business, if you sold 250,000 records back then, you were a star, and now you might not even keep your contract.
Yeah, no kidding, especially nowadays.
But back then, you can't really, unless you were there, and I know that sounds like an old person, but call me old. If you were there, you really can't gauge the power and impact that they had, because it really it affected fashion. It affected just the mindset of a whole generation of people, and it continued to do so because they kept releasing game-changing albums 2 or 3 times a year. I mean, Capitol would, take 2 albums and turn it into 3. So for us Americans, it was just, stuff was always spinning our heads every few, And after I saw the Beatles, like a lot of people my age or older, really, I was young. I started a band, and we were called the Spiders, SPDERS. Because you had to misspell it like the Beatles. And we were terrible, of course. Nobody really knew how to play the instruments or anything. And we weren't even a garage band. We were like a basement band. We could only get shows in like friends' basements, And we would do like, I would take Beatles songs and say they were mine. I would just change. Like, I remember the first song I ever played live was Roll Over Bill Shakespeare. And it was Roll Over Beethoven, except I would sing Bill Shakespeare.
That's awesome.
It's a song I wrote. Because I didn't quite understand songwriting or song ownership or anything like that.
Right.
But that's when it started. And I learned to write songs, though, by stealing Beatles songs. I stole Holly's songs. I stole, whatever song, moved me. I would steal them and say they were mine and rewrite them slightly. But that's how I learned song structure. And in the 60s, I was writing, and towards the end of the 60s, recording my own material. And of course, that stuff was not anything to write home about. But, I began by thinking that I was competing with the Beatles, the Kinks, the Stones, so that by the time I moved to New York, and there was second and third waves of bands influenced by those bands, it was sort of like, well, I know where you're coming from, but I'm influenced by the originals. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
There was a certain arrogance that I had as a songwriter that I probably still have. That I was there for the originals. I don't need to be overly. I can appreciate what you're doing, but I don't have to be overly influenced by a second or third or fourth now.
Yeah.
Even now we're in, the 2026s, the 6th generation Beatles are, I appreciate it. I know where they're coming from, We'll
be right back after a word from our sponsors.
the thing about Cleveland was that that's where I'm from, Cleveland.
Right.
And probably like most Midwestern towns or whatever, is that you had to play cover material. And since I had started out in the 60s wanting to write my own material, it didn't make sense to me by the 70s when I was old enough to maybe play bars or something. Mm-hmm. It didn't make sense to do cover material. I had more than enough songs of my own, but you couldn't get gigs. So that was when I said, well, I've either got to go to the East Coast or the West Coast. And I had just always leaned more East Coast. So in 77, I just packed up and moved to New York without knowing anybody or anything.
When did you go from stealing? I'll just use your word, stealing songs from the Beatles and the Kings. When did you actually say, all right, I'm going to sit down and just write my own music? When did that happen, and what was the impetus for that?
That happened in '66.
Okay.
That I had started keeping notebooks. And I still have the notebooks. And you can see that the notebooks went from me copying the lyrics from other songs, kind of humorous, to where the lyrics started becoming my own. And they were simplistic 2-chord songs, maybe 3 chords if I could work it in or something. So it was like 66. 66 was a big year for me, even now. That was when, a lot of my favorite bands made some really pivotal albums, whether it's the Beach Boys' Pet Sounds or the Beatles' Revolver or the Kinks' Face to Face, or, you could name some others that came out either that year or shortly after.
Right.
And it was a big turning point for me.
So about 10 years later, you end up moving to New York. You saying you didn't know anybody. You had no plan. You had to make it or break it on your own. I mean, did you immediately start in bands, or were you playing solo? Because is that around the time when the Decoys started?
I wasn't playing. I got here and it was pretty overwhelming. I found an attic apartment in Coney Island.
Oh, wow.
It sounded like fun to me. But I moved here in the wintertime, so I didn't know that it was going to be just cold and desolate and deserted, Right. And that's what it was, And my first day here, I saw my first dead guy on the street,
Oh, my God.
Oh, my God, I have arrived, But the first I had to get a job. I had to figure out how I was going to. I had to figure out what it was to live in New York, let alone be a part of any scene or anything. And remember, I didn't really do very much live work in Cleveland, so I had to. My first year or two was just sort of watching and learning and attending shows and seeing what other people were doing and on what different levels people were doing things. By the time I got here, the CBGB's scene had it was still CBGB's, but the scene that sort of changed everything was over. Although we're still, reaping the rewards of the original bands that had done it,
Yeah, which they continued to do for a long time.
Right. So I did form my own band in '79, my own power pop band. But what I found was that, and I was able to play Max's Kansas City and CBGB's and some other places that you've never heard of, the fly-by-night places. Right. But what I found out in doing all that was that I would have to, much to my chagrin, although I tried to be realistic about such things, that I would have to hire myself out as a musician in other bands to meet other promoters, to meet club owners, to meet other musicians. It wasn't just a matter of my showing up and saying, hey, I'm a great songwriter from Cleveland, because everybody was a great songwriter from somewhere.
Right.
And, at that point, you could play the greatest songs in the world, and it might not, it might just go over everybody's heads.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because there were just so many of us that had flocked to New York. So most of the 80s, I always had my hand in my own band on some level.
Okay.
But I started branching out and playing. I found that hiring out as a keyboard player is where a lot of bands needed me, because how can I put this? I wasn't good enough to screw up their sound. I would I would like, because I'm not really a great keyboard player, but I approach the keyboard as a songwriter. So if I'm in your band and you say, we want a keyboard solo here, I will take your song and I will compose what I think is the perfect keyboard solo.
Okay.
Then I will play that solo every sinking time. You know what I mean? You're not going to get me to, I wasn't Rick Wakeman.
Right,
and
right.
That's what I found, is that a lot of bands were very scared of the keyboard players, because the keyboard players always want to show off and they always want to be Rick Wakeman and they want to do this and the other thing. Well, I wasn't good enough to do that, so I couldn't do that.
Okay.
And I was like, I'd hold down the fort for the verses, I'd do the little interludes, and if you want a solo, I will compose one as a songwriter.
Right.
And that's what I brought to the bands that I played with through the 80s, which were like Beat Rodeo and the Bongos at different times,
Right.
was that sort of songwriting impact. And that's how I got to meet certain people and bring my own bands, which went from the Decoys, which was my first power pop band,
Right.
through the Usher years and stuff.
Oh.
And then into the 90s, which is where we start heading into the Stephensonville stuff.
Right, right. So when did work for you really begin on the Stephensonville project? Because it's like I said at the beginning, it's been a 30-year journey with this.
Right. Well, the thing is that by the end of the 80s, early 90s, again, you got to go back in time and try to remember a time, for those of us who were around, when you were still handing cassettes to people.
Yeah.
Or sending them in the mail. And even your invites to shows were in the mail.
Wow. Yeah.
And trying to get A&R people or print people to come to your shows to review or whatever the heck was a real struggle. I mean, you had to, you might even work some writer for 6 months to come to your show, and you think you got him. And then it turns out the same night of your shows, some hot band from London was in town. And so 6 months of work was down the drain because everybody's going to go to the hot band in London. This happened all the time.
Yeah.
And there was nothing you could do about it. Or you'd pass your cassette around, and maybe because of the 7 different strokes of luck, you'd get a meeting with some A&R person, and you would sit there, and they'd put in your cassette, and I'm not lying, and other people would testify, that they would listen to the first 5 seconds and then fast forward to the next song. First 5 seconds.
Wow.
Fast forward to the next song. I mean, this is what they do in front of you.
That's almost worse than Spotify.
Oh, I know, it is worse. And this is what they do in front of you. Imagine what they do when you're not there.
Yeah.
They don't even put it in the machine.
In the circular file.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They never even open the envelope. So, my problem was, well, what can I do? Obviously, I'm trying to write the best songs I can.
Mm-hmm.
But what can I? But again, that's subjective. That's whatever. What can I do as a local live act in New York City? And I've been around now for 10 years. This is like the late 80s, early 90s. Right. What can I do that would make my live show different? It would make people say, oh, let's go see a George Usher show because it's this or it's that, or it does this thing differently. Mm-hmm. And I'd been working with an illustrator to illustrate my songs because I'd always been a fan of, growing up, a fan of Yellow Submarine and a fan of Harry Nilsson's The Point. And there were 2 books of Beatles illustrated lyrics that had been put out. And, there were albums like Quadrophenia that included like a big booklet in it that was illustrated, And I thought, and the Kinks, of course, had done all kinds of, some successful more than others, but they had done, large production type stuff. And well, if I illustrate the songs and make that part of my show, it at least gives me something else, something different.
Exactly.
If we see George Usher play, so we started doing shows at all the usual places, CBGB's, the Bitter End, the CBGB's Gallery, Mercury Lounge, where we'd set up a screen either beside me if I was performing solo or beside my band. We'd find a way to make it work. And we'd throw up the image of the illustration while we'd be performing the song.
Okay.
And the idea, and I don't mean this to sound arrogant and condescending, but I wanted to sort of lead my audience into a situation like Stephensonville that was a larger, more literate kind of experience, something that was a grander thing. But first I wanted to get my audience's feet wet just by getting used to the idea that they're going to be seeing something visual as well as my music, because I realized that, and this is before the internet became, whatever it was, and before computers. This is the early 90s and stuff. Now, I had a music publishing deal. Okay. They hated the idea.
Oh.
They shot it down. They said I was trying to be too smart.
Shame on you, man. You're too smart.
They wanted no part of it.
Let's keep everything stupid.
And
come on.
I remember I played a gig at CBGB's and one of the representatives from the publisher was there. And I when the show was over, I was up front talking to Hilly Crystal, about what was going to be my cut for the evening.
Right.
And my representative, instead of hanging out and talking to me after the show, went running past, screaming, "I don't get it! I don't get it!" And that was the last I saw of her.
Oh, no.
I said, well, that was that.
Yeah.
And that was before Stephensonville.
Oh.
I kept doing, the publishing deal went south because I insisted on continuing to do the art stuff.
Yeah.
Oh. And then by the time I wrote Stephensonville, a lot of other things had changed. A couple of years had gone by. To be honest with you, nobody really picked up the mantle for the visual thing. And the idea of doing a big booklet, because the idea was to do a vinyl big booklet like the Quadrophenia and something. Yeah. By that point, it was like vinyl was dead. It was going to have to come out in a CD, so the booklet was going to be tiny, and everything had changed. And still, if we were going to do a booklet, it was going to be too much money for us to finance, and nobody was getting behind it. So we wound up, we did like one show just to say we did it.
Oh, wow.
And then it sort of just went in the back seat. We did another solo show like back in 2006 at the Bowery Poetry Club, just because I was given a slot to do something. And I did. But again, it was like a tree falling in the forest. Nobody really saw it. Nobody thought about it the next day. It was just,
it hadn't come out, so nobody was really familiar with it.
Right. It was just a performance of something that nobody knew about and still didn't know about.
Right.
So, you want to know what happened to it?
Nothing
happened to it for 3 decades.
Definitely want to. That's like my main question was this something that just lay dormant for the next couple of decades, or did you work on it a little bit?
I did. I put out power pop albums, and I worked with Edward Rogers on some of his albums, and then I did a couple of albums with Lisa Burns. And you can hear the song of sirens drifting in and out of sleep. Others only know the silence everybody hides behind. Broken vows they couldn't keep, drifting in and out of sleep. You can see the marching dandies drifting in and out of sleep, with their hard exotic candies, with their pointed hats and bells, unaware of what they'll reap, drifting in and out of sleep. I was putting out material, but the whole idea of the combining the art and music was, just put on the side, And of course, in all that time, you and now you've got AI and everything. I mean, it's sort of like, the idea of just throwing the image on a screen is very caveman-esque in 2026, And it probably, if we'd done it now, would be more accepted.
Oh, for sure.
But at the time, it was like, oh, you're trying to combine, and I thought, this has been done 1,000,000 times. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
It's art and music. What are you talking about?
Yeah, like the Yardbirds or Pink Floyd would always have stuff playing on in the background.
I know. But because it was being done on a local level, it seemed to confound people.
So strange.
I know. Well, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
But essentially, what happened was if we can go back in time a little bit again.
Yeah.
In like 79, I was managing a record store on the Upper East Side, and there was a teenager who used to come in every day after school, and we'd talk about music, and we'd also talk about things that were going on in his life, good things and bad things.
Okay.
And I was sort of like a big brother to him.
Okay, yeah.
And we had a great friendship, a great relationship, and we stayed in touch, as, life changes hit us both, and, we went in different directions. And he wound up having a career in finance. I continued being the unsuccessful musician, which is my lot, And we were having dinner about a couple of years ago.
Okay.
And said, George, if you had, one project to do before you died, what would it be? And, I have a million different ideas, and I write so many songs, even now.
Yeah.
That I could have said, well, my latest 12 songs, or,
Sure,
something else. And I thought, well, as long as you're asking, and we're putting this out in the universe, this project, Stephensonville, it's the one project that got all the illustrations, because my illustrator did 12 beautiful big paintings, one for each song. And the concept of Stephensonville is that each song is a different person.
Yes.
And so every painting is different, every song is different. And, I said, the thing is that if we were going to do it, it would take a larger budget than my usual album. And he said, well, how much? And I thought about it, and I just wrote down a figure that I still thought was kind of low, but I thought I'd write it down anyway. Here's what I could probably do it for.
Right.
And I handed it to him, and he scratched it out and added to the figure. And I said, well, yes, I could do it for that,
Wow.
And he became my partner in the project.
Oh,
and that allowed me, it's the first time, and I've been, as I've said, as you know, I've been recording since the 60s,
Right.
But this is the first time I've ever had a budget.
Oh.
Ever.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors.
Every project I've ever had was put together with chewing gum and Scotch tape. You say, well, I can get in the studio for 3 hours after midnight, or I can have an engineer for over here, for this low cost, and every record is made in like 12 different studios with 6 different engineers because you can cobble it together,
Yeah.
And this was the first time that I had a budget and I could actually hire a producer, and I looked for a producer who had their own studio because I wanted to start the album and finish the album in the same place with the same people.
Wow.
And I ran into Tony Shanahan from the Patti Smith Group, who has his own studio, and we started talking. I'd known him for many, many years, and things started falling into place with him. Okay. So that was the direction we went. And he brought in most of the players.
Okay, that was going to be my next question, is because you have some amazing people in this band you put together to record this. Let me pull up who we've got here. There's Andy York on guitar. He's played with John Mellencamp. Brian Griffin on drums. Played with Brandi Carlile and the Black Crowes, Andy Burton on keyboards from Ian Hunter, David Mansfield on strings, who's worked with Bob Dylan. I mean, this is an amazing group of artists. So
yeah, all those people were brought in by Tony. I knew Andy York and Andy Burton. I knew Andy York just from hanging out in some of the East Side bars. He was always a good guy to hang out with. But we'd never worked together.
Okay.
I'd done some work with Andy Burton on some Edward Rogers albums. I didn't know Brian Griffin. He was from the West Coast.
Okay.
But I had spoken to James Mastro, an old friend of mine from the Bongos, and he vouched for him.
Okay.
So okay, great.
Also Brandi Carlile, the Black Crowes.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But he'd actually worked with James on his album, so he knew him. And I knew David Mansfield going back to the Alpha Band.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I'd seen his name on 1,000 albums besides Dylan's, and knew what a great instrumentalist he was. And I brought in my own ringer, Mark Sidgwick, who I've worked with on and off since the 80s. He'd come over. He's an English guy. He'd come over with Holly and the Italians, and he was my acoustic guitarist. And let me tell you, he was guiding, as I was guiding the band, he was my right-hand man because he had to play acoustic guitar on all the takes, and his hands were strong enough to do it. And we put together the album in the studio. We would, depending on the song we were doing, we would hang these big reproductions of the paintings to be inspired to sort of play to and create the music for that character.
Oh, nice.
And then we'd put up the next one, and it was a very positive, creative experience, I think, for everybody, because people would do their parts and then they might come back a couple of days later to see what was happening at the sessions because they enjoyed the project so much.
Oh, that's
this is always a good sign.
Yeah.
Because generally a lot of people can just do their parts and then leave, and but these guys would be coming back and checking things out.
Oh, that is awesome. So the music of Stephensonville, did it change much from initial iteration 30 years ago to the recorded versions, or are they fairly faithful to the originals?
Well, strangely enough, I'll tell you, I am, as a writer, totally in love with, and I say this because a lot of times young songwriters are sent to me for one reason or another. The grand old man. I'm not sure why. It's not as if I've had great success in my time, but people tend to speak well of me.
It's the quality of the work.
So a lot of times the young songwriters are sent to me, and the first thing I'll say is, listen, you must edit. You must edit. You must revisit. Do not assume that the first run through is what you want. You have to go back, put it away, come back to it, And so I was prepared to go over the music and go over the lyrics and find all kinds of changes that needed to be made, and there weren't any. I got to be honest with you. I pored over the lyrics, and a lot of the lyrics are sort of have sort of a dark humor to them.
Right.
But they're supposed to. That I didn't want to change any of that. And musically, the only thing I'd never done it. I'd never finished it with any kind of band, so it was sort of like, well, whatever we make of it is what we make of it.
Okay.
They were going with, they used as demos in their head. I remember I said I'd done a solo performance at the Bowery Poetry Club.
Mm-hmm.
They had a recording from the board of my solo performance, and that was the demos.
Wow.
So all they had was me on acoustic guitar, playing and singing the songs.
That's amazing.
So they created their band performance as a band in the studio as we were going along, as the paintings were hanging. And so it was very creative at the time. But musically, as far as the songs, nothing changed except, there would be like let's repeat the tagline, or let's do this twice before the solo, just small little sort of arrangement changes that weren't there when it was just me playing acoustic guitar.
Sure.
But as far as the songs, they're pretty much the same.
That is amazing. That is...
it is amazing. And I kept waiting for, I'll be honest with you, I kept waiting for somebody to say, these songs are like sophomoric, or, these songs sound, you must have written these when you were a kid.
30 years ago.
But but everybody was very impressed with the songs. They loved the songs, And so it was this, and for me, it was a real kind of out-of-body experience, because I knew that the songs were mine, and they were obviously George Usher songs for a lot of different reasons. A lot of my tricks or characteristics or whatever you want to call them are built into the songs. But at the same time, because they were written 30 years ago, I didn't bring the usual... I wasn't as precious about them. It's not like, I wrote this yesterday, don't mess with it.
Right.
It's my latest opus.
Right.
No, it was sort of like, let's see what you got. What do you want to do with this?
Yeah.
And so I was open to everybody's suggestions and where we took the different songs and stuff. And I was surprised. Particularly, let's just say, for instance, the very last song. All the songs are named after the characters that are portrayed in the paintings. Right. And the last song, Benny Weed, is supposed to be sort of a song of liberation, a song of somebody who is broken free and is leaving Stephensonville. The point of, when you get to that point, you want to get out of there.
Yeah.
It isn't worth my life anymore. The ride. I hear you calling, but I can't make up my mind. I hear you calling. And it was always this sort of a chugging little folk song. And I'll be honest with you, the band turned it into a real anthem. And it's, I did not expect that. They actually, took the arrangement and really made it a powerful statement that I had not anticipated.
Oh, wow.
So I was very pleased with how the whole song ended. I did not direct that.
That's amazing. Wow. I don't know if any of these guys had ever worked together on any project. I didn't go that route in my research, but it's really cool to see a group of guys who don't normally play together come together for a project like this and just make it their own. Own it like they've been a band playing together for decades.
Yeah, and I'll be honest. Just because I'll be honest. There have been Usher projects where maybe I've been a little precious because they're my songs or because, of this, that, or the other thing. I'm aware of the pitfalls you can have as the leader of the band or as the guy whose name is going to be above the title of the album, and
For sure.
But I really was, I was open to all their suggestions. And I think just that fact allowed them all, the grace of being just creative enough to please themselves and to please the project in the process. You know what I mean? Because, I was happy. I was saying, give me what you got.
Yeah.
And they could, and they did. And sometimes Andy York was just, he would do take after take of guitars, and then he'd come in and he'd listen and he'd say, I can do better than that, And I'd say to myself, if this was a different time or a different place, I might shoot that down. I might say, no, it's fine. I'm the boss here, everything's good.
Yeah.
But okay, go back in. And he would go back in and do better. He would come up with something off the top of his head, a different riff, a different guitar sound or something. And it was really exciting to watch and to be a part, and for me to be a part of.
Right.
Because it was sort of what you always wanted a recording experience to be.
Yeah.
And I'd certainly been a part of enough with other bands too, where the recording experience wasn't what you wanted it to be. And I knew what that looked like. And this was not that. This was a very positive experience, I think, for everybody.
Well, I think it comes across in the recorded versions that have been released. They sound so amazing.
Thank you.
Is there a reason or a personal connection behind the names Stephensonville or the names of the people/songs on the album?
Well, some of the names I just borrowed from the names themselves. I sort of borrowed here and there from people I'd known, but that doesn't mean that the characters are the people I'd known.
Right.
The characters tend to be people I'd either heard about or dreamt about or considered I needed to be part of this particular statement that I wanted to make at the time. Stephensonville comes from, at the time that I originally just started thinking about it, my father had passed maybe a decade earlier.
Okay.
And I grew up with like one grandma. Everybody else I knew had uncles and aunts and cousins and what have you. I had one grandma. That was it. And my father's heritage was always a murky kind of, strange kind of thing, just that everybody was dead. That's all I knew,
Man.
After he had passed, it took about 10 years. And just because, and remember I told you I was the baby.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason, my dad and the family, because of my dad's wishes, had kept from me the fact that he had been an orphan.
Oh, wow.
And that he had this very Oliver Twistian upbringing.
Whoa.
Where he'd been left a certain amount of money, but it had been sort of spent by the family that had taken him in.
Oh,
and
wow.
This was a family of Stephensons. And they made him work in the onion fields for his keep. And if company came, they would send him to the basement.
Oh, my gosh.
And it was a very, the stories that I was told, and this is a decade or more after he'd passed, moved me greatly, particularly because, for whatever his reasons, he was so ashamed that he didn't want me to know about it. He had gone to sort of do well for himself. He was a local businessman and politician. There's a baseball field in town named after him.
Oh, that's awesome.
because he had sponsored and done a lot of things for youth sports and stuff in town.
Okay.
And he had made a name for himself, although his name, was not Stephenson.
Right.
And I just took that as a sign that the town that I was going to use as this model for where you have to look for the love underneath the surface, and you have to get past all of the different characters who are disreputable in this way or in that way, would be Stephensonville.
That's amazing. Oh my gosh. That just kind of blew me away. Wow.
But that's also why I dedicated the album to my father, and there's a photo of him in the booklet.
Okay. Oh my gosh, this is incredible. So, and you've mentioned this several times that each song is accompanied by artwork.
Right.
And it's amazing. The artwork is really cool. It reminds me of, I don't know if you're familiar with Drive-By Truckers, but their artist, Wes Freed, who passed away a few years ago. He did all the Drive-By Truckers covers, and it's got the same, like a Southern Gothic quality to it.
Right.
And this artwork done, it sounds like, done a bit before Drive-By Truckers stuff had come out, reminds me so much of it gives you that same feeling, that Southern Gothic kind of feel.
Right. Well, I imagine they're both influenced by folks like Thomas Hart Benton and Grant Wood and people like that. It is where they get their ideas, and that, rightly so.
Did you give any direction to the artist about who the song was going to be about, what the subject of the art was going to be?
Yeah, a certain amount.
Okay.
But I also set her free to, I had to have a little bit of input because there are details in the paintings that aren't in the songs. The songs inform the paintings, but the paintings also inform the songs. So I'll give you an example. There's a song called Annie Dunn, which is, for all intents and purposes, a straight love song. Mm-hmm. It's a piano ballad. It's got strings. It's very relatively simple.
I've been pacing down the hall. I don't have any clue at all how to tell you lovingly. You'll never know what you are to me. You'll never know what you are to me.
But the illustration has Annie, her love is for Fat Elvis.
Yes.
And the thing about the love for Fat Elvis, which is whatever you want to make of it, is that if you look at the posters of Fat Elvis that she has on the wall that she's looking at lovingly, even the poster from Jailhouse Rock, he's Fat Elvis. He's Fat Elvis everywhere. Okay. That's what she sees. That's what she wants.
That's incredible.
And there are rats along the bottom because it's not a true love. It's some sort of weird, it's not true love, but it's love.
Yeah.
And I understand it's sort of like the kind of love that some people have for various politicians now, or, it's something that you can't put your finger on, but it's there. And people will, live and die by it. That's how it was is for the cult of Elvis. Yeah. And it doesn't matter whether he's good or not. It's like, that's Elvis, and whether he's Fat Elvis or not. She wants Fat Elvis. Even in Jailhouse Rock, he's fat.
That is amazing. It is funny because I looked through everything and until you said, I was just like, didn't catch on it. Yeah, it is. It's Fat Elvis everywhere in that painting.
Yeah.
That is amazing. I've gone through it. I've listened to it several times because it's just so cool. I love the first person in this story, Reverend Thomas Pardee. I think that is a great track.
Thank you.
I think
it's like a sermon.
Yeah, it is. And
with the congregation joining in as a call and response. Yeah.
marching down the street. There's a new tragedy raining down, and it's gonna be here, and it's gonna be there, and it's gonna shake you down to the ground. It'll marry your daughter, it'll kill your son, and it won't be needing any loaded gun. When people gather to do what's right, it'll go.
And the accompanying illustration is a perfect match. It is incredible. James Strawthard is a great track. I love the opening riff on that.
Right.
That riff that rocks. I love that.
I knew a lady, she was more than a saint to some. She had a habit of telling me all about the Lord and how he was gonna come. I didn't question her.
But I think my favorite track on the album is Town Elders.
Okay.
I absolutely love that. The music is amazing. The lyrics are fantastic. The whole imagery on it is incredible, and the paintings match as well. It's incredible.
Well, we put that on the cover of the album too.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'm just looking at files as I'm doing my research. So I was going to think, oh, that's a great one. I like that one.
See the lantern hanging in the darkness. See the yellow flame. Can't you hear and never be the same? Only fools who stand before the miser offer him their gold.
My favorite painting, though, my favorite illustration is the one that I feel is most haunting. It's Martin Godfrey.
Okay.
That is a spooky illustration. That's my favorite.
Yeah, what are those demons doing?
Oh, no.
Those red guys, what are they doing?
I was hoping you could tell me.
And why is he? Well, I'm just saying. 'Cause I don't want to give too much away.
Right.
Why is he? And why is he 30 years ago worried about people knocking on his door and asking him what his crime is and stuff?
Yeah.
That's and now it's like, well,
Yeah.
it's still happening.
Exactly. There's an Orwellian twist to things in here and in real life.
Yeah.
So the album there's physical copies, limited physical copies available. I believe it's 200.
We're only pressing 200.
Wow. That sounds, I mean, yeah,
the package is just like it was supposed to be 30 years ago. That's the thing. I was so worried that, now it's going to be this little CD with this booklet. No, it's every bit just like I imagined it 30 years ago. It's so wonderful. It's like I can die now. You know what I mean? It's like the actual, and generally, because I've been involved in lots of records over my time, and there's always a misprint, or somebody's name is spelled wrong, or the colors didn't come out the way you thought, or whatever. No, this thing is perfect. It's everything I wanted it to be. All the colors are right, which you got to watch out for when there are all these paintings.
Oh, yeah.
You thought, are they going to mess up the colors somehow? No, everything is perfect. I couldn't ask for a better production job.
Oh, it's so great.
It really turned out terrific. And sometimes I just look at it and say, my God, 30 years, It
was worth it.
And it's worth it. Yeah, it's like I thought of it yesterday. The 30 years just went by like that because it is as I thought of it 30 years ago. And there it is. It's like I hibernated for 30 years and woke up, and there it is.
Well, there's a reason when you're asked if there's one project you wanted to complete, what would it be? And you chose this. There's a reason for that. Yeah.
It would have been easier to choose something else.
But not nearly as rewarding and probably not as impressive.
Yeah.
It's just an impressive group of songs. It's an impressive package. It's impressive artwork. It's so beautiful. I cannot wait to see this in person. I got to see what this thing looks like in my hands. I can't. It's so amazing. But are you planning on doing any shows for Stephensonville?
Well, at this point, what we've got is, I do everything one thing at a time.
Sure.
I'm old now, but not too old, but older.
Yeah.
Tomorrow at the 503 Social Club in Hoboken, which doubles as a performance space and a gallery, we have the opening reception for the first exhibition of the Stephensonville paintings in 30 years. So those 12 paintings, which are large and are very impressive when you see them all together, there's the opening reception is tomorrow from 2 to 5 at the 503 Social Club, and they're going to be up for like a month. And then the album is technically released next Friday, 20th, and so far the record release show is next Saturday, March 21st, again at the 503 Social Club, where I'll be doing a performance with my friend Mark Sidgwick, just the two of us. It'll be an intimate performance of the work, but we'll be surrounded by the paintings, and that at this point is the only scheduled performance of Stephensonville. I would hope to do another performance, perhaps with the band later in the year in Manhattan.
Okay.
I wanted to at least get the album out, get some press about it, and have the paintings shown. Yeah. So this is all one big Stephensonville week at the 503, and then we'll see where it goes from there. You know,
that's fair. And I guess one of the last questions I have for you is, when you're playing this live, is there an order to the songs?
Do it in the order that they are in the album.
Okay.
And we'll also be handing out programs with all the lyrics so that people can follow exactly. Because, what happens is that, like Spoon River Anthology, where I stole the conceit of the poems being named after the characters. Yeah. The characters do speak sometimes to each other across songs. So, you have to sort of see that one person is speaking to another one 7 songs later.
Right. That makes sense.
So it behooves you to follow the songs in order and see what's happening,
That makes total sense. So where can people find this and purchase the physical copies? And is it going to be available on streaming or in digital platforms as well?
Well, there are no plans right now to stream it.
Okay.
Because we want to keep it kind of exclusive, at least for a while.
Okay.
I would think at some point we'll find a way to, because part of the problem is that if we're going to stream the music, we've got to stream the artwork, because the artwork is part of the album. You don't want to do one without the other.
Right.
And that's been part of the problem, even in sending it out to be reviewed, is that how do you make sure that people have both,
right.
But as far as right now, we will be selling the album at the record release show, and you can go to Bandcamp to George Usher, and it will be available there. You can order it from me, and I'll send it to you.
Oh, wonderful. Is there a social media presence or that people can follow you and see what you're up to, see the progression of this, and if you are playing more shows?
Not very well. I mean, I'm on Facebook and stuff. I had a pretty good website that went back to like the 80s, and it just took a little bit of money to keep it going each year. And then somehow somebody dropped the ball. Oh. And it just all disappeared. Oh. And, there are people who say, oh, George, you can build it back. But you know what? It took 20 years to put that together, And I'm of a certain age now. I don't know. Finding like reviews for 1990 and stuff. It's like maybe I can do that, but who's got the time?
Yeah, I understand
But
that.
I am. There is I think if you go to georgeusher.com, there's sort of a Facebook presence
Okay.
that have shows and some videos and some links to things.
Okay.
I should get better at that. I know that all my business people scold me, and it's like, well, I can only do so much.
Yeah.
I'm
I
of a
totally
certain age.
understand.
Oh, it's like I could hire somebody, but who has the money to do that?
Yeah, I know that one too.
But
Podcasting doesn't make much
I
money.
had a great website, but it's gone.
What is the best way for people to find out what you're up to then? How would you recommend they find
I
you?
guess go to georgeusher.com. It will take you, though, to a Facebook page now.
Okay.
There is no georgeusher.com that was the old website.
Right.
And now it'll take you to a Facebook page where, if nothing else, I post upcoming shows and record releases and whatever I'm doing that is of a public nature.
Okay. That's perfect. Well, I wish you the most success you could possibly have with this because it has blown me away. The stories you've told me make this project even better for me. So I want to just thank you for your time this morning. Thank you for this amazing album. It's my pleasure. And this album is just, it's been incredible. I absolutely love the early mix of multimedia and seeing it come to life 30 years exactly how you wanted it to. That makes me so happy.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
The carnival is here. It's headed into town, and night is falling down in Stephensonville. Too hard to laugh, too afraid to cry. Words can't explain